Really glad you're already here and everything's working.
Okay. Do I need
Tina,
to know anything else?
No, I just hang on, I actually have this somewhere. You've uploaded your own.
Yes.
Hey, Miri. Good morning.
Hi, Miri.
Hi, Miri. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm the tech support here, but also
yeah, I saw. Very cool.
but also a presenter. Yeah.
Yeah, you never sent me how you want to be presented.
I sent you yesterday with the context. Yeah.
Oh, yes. It never showed up. I've been waiting for these things to come in. How strange.
Hi.
But maybe, do you want people to try to share their presentation and see?
Well, the people who are presenting will be sharing, will be uploading. They'll be doing the sharing. Nobody sent me anything. I don't know if you got anything. If you did, then
no, but maybe they can, you know, try it on and see if there is a problem before we start the session.
Okay, so well, you're first, Miri. So why don't you see that yours is working? Although I'm guessing it is. So, but let's just check anyway.
I will support myself.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll close this. Hi, I just want to say hello before I mute myself.
Hi, Tina.
Hi.
Are you going to be sharing the presentation?
No, Lindsay's going to share the presentation.
Okay.
Hi. I'm Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay.
I'm going to be sharing. Hi, everybody.
Great. Good. Okay, so please let's check and see. Miri is our tech support, where it says room 3. That's Miri. She's our tech support, and we just want to see that the presentations are working, the sharing is working properly.
Is it fine? Can you see?
It looks good. Yeah, perfect, wonderful. Lindsay, would you like to try sharing as well?
I don't seem to be able. It says that I still have not been. My sharing is still disabled.
Okay. Now you will be able to do it.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, wonderful. And Nikki as well. You can try. Excellent. Okay, so that's working wonderfully. We've still got a few minutes. If there are any, I'm glad everything's working properly. Okay, wonderful.
So it's time to bring coffee.
Yes, it's time to go get your coffee or your water, and we'll be starting in about 3 minutes. We'll try to get everything in on time so that we're not. If I figure out how to quieten down my dog, that would really work well.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, just to say that I don't mind if you can't see me, but I can't get my screen to show, but I'm just wondering. Oh, here we are. I think I've got it. There you go.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, it's always nice to see who the people are. So if you can share your video, that would be wonderful, just so we'll see the people in the room. It's always nicer to talk to actual people than it is to a black box. I see we have good mornings from Germany, from Montreal, from Hamburg, from Montreal, and from India. Good morning, everyone. How
and
exciting.
Australia.
Hi, Australia. Good morning. It sounds like the Eurovision. Very cool. And Italy, good morning as well. Oh, very cool. The wonders of technology. Huh? I'm guessing more people will probably be coming in. So we've got
Miri, did you find the two sentences that I sent you?
no, I didn't get anything from you, Miri. It's very strange because I got from everybody else. I got Nikki, Tina, I got everybody's but yours. That's so weird.
Yeah, because I answered your emails. Not a mistake in the... Let me check it.
It is so strange. Millie, did you reply to my email?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Because you asked me to sign on the...
Yeah, I need the forms. Lindsay, I need yours as well. Tina sent it in. I'm missing.
To get mine?
I got from Tina and from Nikki. And I need Lindsay's as well so I can actually share from both of you. So if you can just send that to my email, I'll pass those on after. And I'd like to get started. Mealy, I don't know how to introduce you.
Okay, I will introduce myself. It's fine.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. Just send me that form later. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Miri Yochana. I'm going to be chairing. Excuse me for the dog barking in the background. I'm going to be chairing this session. I hope you can hear me. I apologize. We have three very interesting talks today. The session works. Every presenter has about 10 minutes to present. I will give you a 2-minute warning towards the end. My phone should be going off with a little bit of a ring. You'll hear it, and then I'll just say, you have 2 more minutes. So if you have any questions, please write them into the chat, directing them to the person that you want to ask the question to. And then I will try to ask the questions, as many as we can get into the last 10 minutes of the session. Okay, so we're going to just get started. Miri, Dr. Miri Schoenfeld is our first speaker, so please go ahead, Miri.
Okay. Okay, so I am Miri Schoenfeld from the Kibbutzim College in Tel Aviv, in Israel, and I work together with Miri Yochana at the Kibbutzim College. And I work also at Mofet Institute, and I'm the head of the Tech Center, which stands for Technology, Education, and Cultural Diversity. And what we do, we connect between students and teachers from different cultures by studying online in online collaborative courses, but this is not the topic of this presentation. And I would like to focus this presentation about international online writing community. And this community was established as part of the faculty development at the Kibbutzim College. And the expected outcome was a book that I'm sure that in many other universities and especially in Israel, in our colleges of education, it was part of the faculty development in the last, let's say, maybe 7-8 years. And I started with a small community at the Kibbutzim College, but then it became an international community. So for the community, I opened an internet site. It's a Moodle site, and here this is the Moodle site. We had all the timeline for the book. We started in July 2015, and you can see that our schedule was to send the materials to the publisher on September 2016. And actually, we finished, the book was published at the beginning of 2019. So it was a long time of having the community, but everything was here in our website, discussions, articles that we gathered, tools, all the publication requirement. Then we had the review. So each of us reviewed other papers. So all the review process was here on our online, on our website. And this was the product, the book about collaborative learning in a global world. So it was a collaborative process about collaborative learning. And my co-editor was David Gibson from the University of Perth in Australia. So maybe some people here know him. I heard that someone is from Australia. And actually, we know in the last 10 years, we know about such communities, communities of practice, communities of learning. So this community, as we can call it, was a community of writing. And it's suitable for the academic faculty and teacher education. When you have something that you have to complete and you want to do it together with a community, it was a good idea to open such a community. Of course, it advances the productivity and increases the motivation to write. And I think that the keynote speaker referred to the problems of also of motivation to write, and we know that it's not an easy task. So the study was in a qualitative approach. We had interviews with the writers. We had an open-ended questionnaire. And of course, we took data from the website. And the categories that we found in our analysis related to expectations. There were different expectations between the participant and the editors, which was interesting. The features of the community encounters. There was a lot about the community website, which was one of the advantages of this journey. and of course about the feedback that they got from their peers. After analyzing the literature, we concluded that an online community of writing is very different from community of practice, community of inquiry, community of interest, or community of learning. Because it was similar to other online communities, because it was based on a common interest that contributed to social ties, and there was ongoing interaction, and it was on the internet. However, the writing community contributed to the support of the writers by way of international social climate that was created, and also by the way of the website platform, because they had something or a place where they can upload everything and see the others and get feedback from the editors, but also from their peers. The online environment and the tools help the activities of the community, but it didn't contribute to the continuation beyond of the needs of those activities. So it was very focused on the writing. This was interesting, and maybe it can be changed in another process. You can read more about it in the PIM in Hebrew, the PIM journal, the one that will come on October. And the main concern now, if we think about it, is the value of the book. If we think about futures.
Nearly 2 minutes.
Yeah, this is the last one. If we speak about future students, we have to think if they will know how to scroll the book. So this is actually the presentation. And I don't know, Miri, if you want questions now, or do you want them at the end of the presentation?
We actually, because you already actually have 2 minutes, if you want to take them now, I guess we can.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Susanna. What kinds of additional support or continuation would you want from such a community of writing?
Just a minute, I will come back to stop. What kinds of additional support
or continuation would you want from such a community for writing?
Yeah, we thought that since we created an atmosphere of a community, that there will be more discussions about materials, what is collaboration, what kind of collaboration can we create, but it was very focused on the writing of this book. It wasn't, there was nothing beyond the issue of writing these chapters. And if we looked at the discussion forums, it was only about the production of this chapter, the production of this book. And this was something which we maybe could do differently, but at this process, it was really community of writing, just about writing the book.
Okay, so Susanna says, I see, so you wanted a writing community that goes beyond that specific task.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are any other questions, we can take one more minute. If not, we'll just continue. You can think about them and write it and direct them to Miri towards the end. It's also definitely an option. Okay, thank you, Miri. Very, very interesting talk. Thank you so much. Our next presenters are Dr. Lindsay Shapiro and Dr. Tina Waldman. Dr. Lindsay Shapiro is the chair of the English Teaching Training Department at Herzog Academic College And Dr. Tina Baldwin is a lecturer in the English Teaching Training Department at Kibbutzim College. It's all yours. Go for it. Thank you. Again, questions in the chat if anyone's got them.
I just had to unmute myself.
Before they actually start, if everyone can mute themselves, like, my dog's been barking in the background this whole time, but the rest of everyone can just mute themselves except for Tina and Lindsay.
Okay, hello everybody. So the title of our talk, as you see, is Lexical Agency and Digital Tools Towards Enhanced Written Production. So the study explored the impact on writing and vocabulary development when students are given the opportunity to exercise agency in their lexis development. And when we talk about agency, what we're referring to is learner choice of lexis, collocation, phrases, grammatical patterns, which are then explored through various lexical tools like just the word, and used in a pushed output task. The concept of a pushed output task refers to Meryl Swain's claim that the act of producing language constitutes part of the process of second language learning. Our preliminary findings reveal that learner agency impacts lexical richness in written assignments and a high degree of originality and creativity. We'd like to share 4 main principles connected to lexis retention. Explicit vocabulary instruction is necessary to ensure retention, but even more important is actually the teaching of strategy, and this is kind of where the agency comes in. Cued output results in higher learning gains, and finally the involvement load hypothesis actually is going to be particularly pertinent to our study. The involvement load hypothesis has shown that the amount of retention is related to the amount of task-induced involvement load. Quite simply, the more the student is engaged in exploring vocabulary, the more they will learn. And these are 3 components to this hypothesis that was developed by Holstein and Laufer. And I'd like to now pass you over to Tina.
Hi. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the method we used. The subjects of our research include both an experimental group and a control group. All the students were studying to become English teachers, and the research was carried out in their writing courses in 2 teacher training colleges, but the courses were aligned to the same CEFR standards. Over the course of 1 semester, the experimental group students were told to choose 5 words per week to enter into their personal digital Lexis blogs. These blogs were set up for them on Moodle. The control group were not given these instructions. As the students were studying in English, there was plenty of input for them to choose from, and they chose words which were salient to them or words which they felt they might need to know. Then they researched these words. First of all, looking for collocations and phrases using lexical tools like Just the Word or Flack's collocation library. And they were told to also write down these collocations in their lexical blogs. Secondly, they were told to look at examples in online dictionaries of collocation use, and they were told to write sentences with these collocations in the lexical blogs. And lastly, every 3 weeks, they chose 10 collocations from their blogs, which they then integrated into a piece of creative writing, either a story or narrative prose. So this strategy tested the involvement load hypothesis in 3 ways. In terms of need, the students chose words that they wanted to learn or perceived that they would need. In terms of search, they used several different online lexical tools to discover more about ways the words were used in collocations and lexical chunks. And in terms of evaluation, the students had to evaluate their use when they tried to integrate them in their own pieces of writing. So here we're going to show you, we don't have much time, so these are very short excerpts from their writing, and you'll see the highlighted sections are chunks, and these are, they used a variety of different chunks in their writing. For example, beat around the bush is an idiom, or reciprocal benefits, quite a transparent collocation, source of income, same thing. And they also use quite opaque phrases like in content or most likely. We also did some qualitative research with these students, and at the end of semester we submitted to them a questionnaire with open questions. We submitted the questionnaire both to the experimental group and the control group, although we only asked the control group about their perceptions of how much vocabulary and lexis they think they learned over the semester. And our findings were that the experimental group perceived learning significantly more lexis than the control group. And they also reported the following. So they said that exploring collocations in dictionary and using digital tools helped them to retain the collocations. But what helped them, they felt to a greater extent, was having to write sentences with the collocations. Although the majority of them claimed that the most effective source of lexical development for them was in the writing of the story or the prose. And our last question was whether they would could see themselves using this strategy that they've been using over the semester in their future studies. And again, the majority, over 90%, said they would use this strategy when they're writing in their future college courses. But more than that, they said that this has definitely impacted their teaching, that they will pay attention to collocations and phraseology when they're teaching. And in fact, they would use these tools in order to help them prepare for their future lessons. And now I'm handing you back to Lindsay for the conclusion.
Okay, thanks, Tina. So I'm just going to wrap this up with 2 main points. Although students reported that the story or prose piece of writing was the most significant factor in lexis learning, agency in choice of words, collocations, and the use of the lexical tools was also a factor in enhancing the learning. And this would seem to support Laufer and Holstein's
Lindsay, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Findings regarding task-induced involvement. They were very, very engaged. I would say that they spent about 10 minutes researching every lexical item. And number 2, students revealed a high degree of originality and creativity in their written work. And our findings suggest that lexical richness and creativity are positively affected by agency vis-a-vis the compilation of the blog based entirely on choice. This also seems to support Nation's claim that creative use of lexis is a psychological condition for learning. And this was kind of surprising for us. We did not necessarily expect the creative factor to impact so extensively on their retention and perception of how much lexis they had actually learned. These are our references, which you can have a greater look at later when we send it in to Miri. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was really very interesting. We have a few questions. I'd like to do them now very quickly for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll pass it on to Nikki. The first question was what words were the most common words that the students chose? Is there anything that you've noticed about something like that, common words?
Tina, do you want to answer?
I know, because I haven't looked at their blogs for a while. I only looked at their research finding. They chose quite low frequency words. I can't, nothing particular comes to mind. Actually, that's not true. Sometimes I was a little bit shocked because they chose quite high frequency words, and I thought, why are college students choosing these words? They should know them. But other times they chose quite low frequency words because they do study quite a lot of literature. So, you know, their attention was drawn to words that they were not familiar with from literary texts. You know, everything that you saw in the excerpts, one of those words in the chunks was one of the words that they chose. But I don't remember specifics offhand. Particularly.
There wasn't anything that stuck out particularly.
And I wasn't looking for. I was looking for usefulness. I was looking for words that they would, or collocations that they would use in their output again and again and again. So anything that would stick out would be particularly rare, which is not very useful. So,
can I just add something? I think some of the very high frequency words they chose because they didn't necessarily know what they collocated with.
Yeah.
In other words, they knew the words, but they didn't know any lexical phrases with those words. And some of the very low frequency words, as Tina said, we were very, very surprised by some of rather opaque decisions that and I think that I think they were just lexically curious. I think they were curious about what these words mean and how they function, even though they knew that they were very, very low frequency words. And that contributed to the creative aspect as well.
Interesting. And we're gonna one more question that came up, two very similar questions about the digital tools or the lexical tools that you both used. There was a question, Joel and Limor both asked questions about the tools. Could you give us you have a minute, if you can explain that.
Which tools?
Which digital tools or which lexical tools did you use to help?
Okay, just the word. They all like just the word very much. They all like the Flax collocation dictionary very much, and some of them said they even created their own games, and because you can play games on it. Those were the most popular, and also English online dictionaries. I expected most of them to report, because they're Hebrew speakers, that they were using bilingual dictionaries, but they went straight for the English because they said that's where they felt they would find more collocations and such like.
And uses.
So,
uses of the words, sentences which use the words they're going to find in the English dictionaries. Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. There are a couple of other questions. We'll see if we have time later on. I want to give Nikki the time she needs for her presentation as well. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Tina. Very, very, very interesting. And our next speaker is Dr. Nikki Awonian. She's a lecturer in the Department of English and the Department of Elementary School Teaching at Oronim College of Education in Israel. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. In this session, I want to take you back a few years in time to the period in which I was a doctoral student in education at Monash University in Australia. My doctorate was a narrative inquiry into the professional learning of literacy teachers here in Israel. And it's relevant that I was studying as an off-campus distant learning student, and my two supervisors were in Australia, which is almost 14,000 kilometers away.
Nikki, sorry to stop you. Could you put your presentation in presentation mode?
I can try.
Very small this way.
Okay.
Yeah, much better, thank you.
Okay. In my years of doctoral study, I met my two supervisors face-to-face only twice, once in Melbourne and once in Denmark when we were at a conference together. And in this paper today, I want to present parts of my writing story, which Richardson explains as a reflective narrative, which critically grapples with the writing process. And the internet is a central theme in my story, and I want to share the role of information technologies and digital communication in reading, writing, and learning in my study. Dowling and Wilson argue that digital environments transform learning at all levels, including doctoral education. Digital technology, and especially Web 2 technologies, have the potential to connect those involved in dynamic, flexible, and interactive ways. In this way, the social construction of knowledge is possible. Web 2 tools are central today in cooperation and collaboration, access to information, and knowledge distribution in higher education. According to Dowling and Wilson, at the heart of doctoral study are the requirement to adopt the behaviour and the identity of a researcher and to develop professional directions, awareness of norms and disciplinary expectations. And the authors argue that students can receive support in all of these processes on the web. I will share how my experiences support this argument. Paige Brown and other researchers point to the loneliness connected to the doctoral research. Alongside research on loneliness, many studies describe how digital communications have entered all spheres of our lives and have redesigned how we teach, learn, and communicate. Today, the digital world offers researchers a wide range of environments and tools which can help relieve loneliness, increase feelings of empowerment, and support the researcher in completing the task. In the time I have left, I want to share how I overcame those feelings of loneliness and being overwhelmed by the enormous PhD challenge with the support of digital tools. Marianne Peter divides the use of digital tools by PhD students into 4 different categories: formal dialogue, informal interactions, documentation, and space for reflection. And I added access to literature and accountability, organisation, and output. I will show the 6 areas and the main tools I adopted in my PhD. Despite the fact that Dowling and Wilson found in 2015 that most of the PhD students they interviewed believed that you can't replace a face-to-face supervision meeting with a virtual meeting, my experience is different. About once a month, I met with my 2 supervisors on Skype or Zoom. The sessions were efficient, set around predetermined goals, and were held in a relaxed and very personal atmosphere. It was clear I could always turn to them for help or with questions between the sessions. Beyond the communication with my supervisors, I maintained interaction with journal editors about articles under review, and this interaction was usually by email or the journal website. Occasionally, I reached out and made contact with other academics around the world, either by email, ResearchGate, or their blogs, and this communication was always very exciting. During my Master of Education studies, I opened and maintained a reflective blog called Thesis Thoughts, connected to my writing. Here, for example, I reflected on my participation in a conference. Bennett and Foley argue that social media can help in the development of researcher identity. They explain that students can receive support, draw motivation, and fight loneliness. And I read and responded to a regular circle of blogs and actively participated in a community of PhD students on Twitter. I felt a part of an international community and met researchers whose work was relevant to mine. Beyond that, I identified with the struggles and triumphs of other students as they did with mine. On Twitter, I had writing companions at all hours of the day and night. Here are some examples of topics I raised, and in the short tweets you can feel the writing process and the burden of the challenge before me. A central tool was my reference manager, EndNote, which I received from the university, and additional tools for note-taking and free writing were Evernote and Google Drive. As a qualitative researcher, my research journal was at the heart of my practice. The journal was divided between a paper notebook and Word documents, and in the past, my blog also served this function. As I progressed in my study, I felt less comfortable sharing my unpolished reflections, and those developing feelings of vulnerability may have been connected towards my growing interest in finding employment in the academic world after I finished my degree. Despite the fact that I refrained from updating my blog in the final stages of my PhD, I do want to stress that when I wrote there, my research journal was precise and elaborate. The understanding that I had readers, and I knew I had readers because they were commenting, led me to richer and more interesting reflection. For example, this is a post which shares my feelings after submitting my master's thesis. Additional tools for reflection that I valued were digital planning tools and brainstorming platforms. Here you can see that I planned a conference paper with MindMap. I heard about the tool on Twitter and later tweeted that I'd enjoyed the learning experience with the tool. I won't elaborate on the sources of literature available to the digital researcher. I will say, though, that the Monash University off-campus library service received a place of honour in my thesis acknowledgements. They were a great help in my research journey. Many tools are available on the web to help improve your writing. I never write, even today, without an online thesaurus and a digital dictionary open, very often translating between English and Hebrew. I check my text with Grammarly. I also rely heavily on different sites which support early career writers. I especially recommend Patter, which is a blog by...
Nikki, 2 minutes.
That's fine. It's very easy to waste time, procrastinate, and get lost on the long road to the PhD. Tools which helped me stay on track and keep efficient were 750 words, a site which creates a commitment to write 750 words every day, and the Pomodoro Technique. On the site, you use a timer and allot time to writing without interruption. It works. Every year in November, I joined ACRIMO, Academic Writing Month. You write in a community, document your progress, and receive encouragement. It's a worthwhile framework for writing process. Okay. Throughout my study, the theories of Bakhtin, and especially concepts like dialogue, heteroglossia, adressivity, and unfinalizability were significant. The theory formed the base of my epistemology and provided tools for data analysis and theoretic lens through which I explored the role of digital technologies in my writing. In my narrative practitioner inquiry, I grappled with my identities and the voices emerging in the various digital texts I was generating. There's no doubt that questions of writing and publication on the internet are connected to many dilemmas. Questions of ethics arise all the time. What can I publish? How? Anonymously or openly? How can I protect the privacy of my colleagues and my participants? Another question which I've already mentioned is my own vulnerability as an early career researcher, sharing my struggles and uncertainty. And I'll leave you with a warning. Holland and Judge explain that availability of personal devices, digital devices, has the potential to enhance or detract from learning in higher education. The digital tools can prove to be a significant source of motivation, but can also hinder learning and encourage time wasting. In order for technology to enhance learning and not the opposite, the researcher must set clear goals and utilize the tools for time management and self-discipline. I'm going to leave you with a smile. This was very, very significant kind of position in my learning. And I want to thank you for listening and share my Twitter handle here. And I'd love to continue the conversation with anybody who's interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Very interesting, very Wow, wonderful tools. Thank you for sharing those and your whole experience. There weren't any questions unless somebody's got something. Now we have about 2 minutes. Is there any questions to Nikki? Okay, we did have one more question to Tina and Lindsay. I'm going to take advantage of our 2 minutes. Lexico Leo was asking, what did they write in the blogs as opposed to the creative writing task that you discussed once a week? Was there a difference between?
They recorded their words, collocations, phrases, and sentences in their blogs.
In the blog.
In the blogs. And the piece of writing they did every week, they submitted, separately, because the threads were getting very long. So things would get lost if they continued doing that in the blog.
Yes. So the blog entries were not narratives, is what he's asking.
Sorry?
So the blog entries were not narratives?
No, the blogs were not narratives. We didn't, we were parallel to doing this. They were getting writing assignments, almost weekly. So we didn't overload them.
Makes sense. Nikki, a question to you from ST. What was the name of the mapping tool you presented?
I've used quite a few. I try and use the free ones. There are some very, very good ones which cost a lot of money. The one that I showed here was called Mind Map, which also synchronizes with Google Docs.
Is it free?
It's free.
That's always good. And one last question.
Probably the best one is called Inspiration, but it costs a lot of money.
Somebody was asking about what is the Limo asked, what is the Pomodoro Technique? If you can explain that in like 30 seconds, because we do have to wrap up.
Okay. Pomodoro Technique is a way where you work with a timer and you can disconnect yourself from the world and write for 25 minutes without stopping. And then you have 5 minutes of break. And then after every 3 25-minute sets, then you take a longer break of 10 minutes.
Okay, interesting.
There's a good website which explains it.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Unfortunately, our time is up and we have a short break to go into. Thank you so much to all our speakers. This was absolutely wonderful. Thank you guys for joining me. Please go back into the program. Our next sessions start at 11, but we now have a short tour of Israel. So please click on that. You can get a short tour of an Israeli tour, and then at 11 o'clock, join us in the next sessions. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us today.